I'm a bit obsessed with money right now. And if you're anything like me, you are too, whether it's making more or holding on to it. But here's the thing, the problem isn't the money. The problem is with your nervous system. The bottom line is that you're really, really good at staying alive. It's what we're designed to do as humans, survive. We're literally hardwired for it. So what does that have to do with money? Money flows. It's that simple. If our nervous systems aren't calm, then money can't flow. If you're used to working hard, hustling, money can't flow without immense effort. If you can't hold on to money, it's not because of a lack of work. It's from a lack of capacity. So this is my obsession. Healing the nervous system to allow money to stay and flow with ease. Literally build the capacity to hold more. Establish the ease to allow money to flow with ease. And that's what the held container is all about. So if you feel like you brace for life, wait for the other shoe to drop, hang on until the next payday, or panic and avoid money altogether, this program is for you. And if you just felt like I threw you a lifeline, lifted you out of a sense of drowning, then this is for you. Go to nagarelife.com to apply. The program is only open to 6 people, and applications are open now. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Find Your Flow. I am in the studio today with Talor Stewart. Now, here's what's so interesting. As you're aware, I'm a little bit of a nerd. I love setting up my entire life to celebrate the person that I am and the person that I hope to be, my highest expression. And in that being my end goal, everything about my space changes. You're well aware that I consider my body my space. I consider my mind my space. I consider my home my space. And in doing so, I really, truly, firmly believe, or else I wouldn't be a feng shui master. I firmly believe that our space really does hold one of the biggest keys to us being able to show up in our lives, radiating our brilliance. So today I have with me Talor Stewart, who is an architect. My heart is already bursting at the seams. I love architecture. I don't know much, but I sure do love the tracing paper. And not only that, but he has created a program that helps you go through a very scientific Maslow's hierarchy of needs program to try and come up with a home that is best suited for you, your goals, the relationships in your life. I can't wait to dig into this. It is called the Conscious Home Design. Talor, welcome to Find Your Flow.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks. Glad to be here. Beautiful introduction. I really appreciate that. I think everybody knows about the mind body connection, and part of the work that you and I do is to help people put that mind body environment connection to work for them more effectively, because as much as we know about the mind body connection and we know a lot, but there's so much more to learn. We're really just scratching the surface in terms of what the collective body of humanity understands so far. The mind body environment connection is even less understood. And so
Mhm.
we're really, opening a door into, vast blue ocean of territory. So there's a lot of rich conversation that we can have around this. And I'm just so happy to connect with you here today. Thanks.
Man, it's such an honor to have you here. I think there's a lot of science coming out, a lot of studies that are coming out to show that the more disconnected we are from our environment, the higher things like anxiety, depression, stress, all of these
Isn't that the truth?
negative triggers.
Yeah, right. We know these things intuitively. There's so much stuff that we know experientially, but when we see the data, it
Yeah.
suddenly crystallizes it for us. It puts it into tangible concepts that we can recognize with our sort of, thinking conscious mind, rather
Yeah.
than that subconscious knowing. There's so many things that have been nagging at us. We're like, what is that thing? But suddenly when it gets put into words, you're like, that's what that is, and it becomes validated.
Hmm.
And more importantly, once it's identified, clearly, you can then start to get a purchase on this issue and figure out does something need to shift, and now you know what to do. Knowing is half the battle. And so it gives you clarity, and then clarity is confidence, and confidence is speed. Because if you're not clear and confident about what to do, you just sort of you stagnate, you procrastinate, you stay in a holding pattern, and you don't change anything because you're not sure what to do. And so the more that we can identify, what's true, the more successful or the more quickly we'll be able to take successful actions.
Man, I love that. Clarity is confidence, and confidence is action. Being able to take those inspired actions, it's what changes our lives in every single moment. You can make the same decision again and again and again and again and sit there wringing your hands going, well, why hasn't my life changed? It's because you're sitting there doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. So I love, 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 love that that you said those words. That might be the title right there. I absolutely love those words. That's fantastic. Can you tell me, Talor, so this whole show is themed around the concept of flow. And for me, it means one thing. For another guest, it could mean another thing. What does flow mean for you?
Flow is connection. Nature, we could probably agree that nature is in a constant state of flow,
Mhm.
even though there is obviously, chaos and opposing forces in nature. Nature has tons of friction um,
Mhm.
in it all over the place. But those frictional pieces are part of the flow. So, the built environment is like it's like concept made crystallized, made real. Like as an architect, before we construct a building, there's a blueprint for it. There's an archetype
Yeah.
in a sense, right? And so first it's an idea, and then it's a drawing, a concept on paper, and then it's built in 3D in the real world. And I think nature operates on that same process. I think there's an unmanifested blueprint, behind the things that get programmed. Like if you look at DNA or different genetic codings and stuff, there has to be structure and organization behind that, metaphysical before
Mhm.
the physical happens.
Mhm.
And so the more we can identify with our sort of inner blueprint or inner GPS and what that is, rather than, well, the more we can identify with that, I believe, the more we're going to feel like we're connected to flow. And so for me, my own personal process about that was, when I was a young man, I was always sort of a seeker. I just had this attitude, even from from a teenager, early teen years and tween years, even I was looking for ways to expand myself. And as I went through life and became an adult and engaged with friends and started to explore my world. I've been to 49 states and all across Canada and other countries and stuff, and really just getting out there and doing stuff and adventuring. I found that there was so much, you almost have decision fatigue. There is so many choices. Like life is a big giant buffet, and and
Mhm.
advertisers are really good at trying to get your attention. Hey, you want this, you want that, and
Yeah.
and even the movies and stories that we watch for entertainment are filled with, we get we get taught what to want and what to go after,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And at some point, so you hear this a lot about people that go through, maybe they just finished college and suddenly they have a degree, a professional degree in something, and yet they feel like, oh my God, is this really what I want to do? And they have a crisis
Right.
moment, like, wait, maybe
Yes.
I made a wrong choice, or they get married or they get divorced. And there's so many huge milestone turning point, like self-awareness, like turn the searchlight back in and say, am I on the right path? There's these big
Mhm.
moments that we have. And so I had one as a young man. I've had many. I have them practically daily, to be honest. I
Yeah,
tend to
I'm right there with you.
overthink things, right? But I have an existential moment practically every morning when I wake up. I'm like, okay, what are we doing now? But I had a pretty big one, as a natural life phase, sort of, late teens, early 20s. And it was, well, I'll tell you a story. How about that? A
Please.
personal story. I was used to like to play drums, hand drums, and I had my first
Mhm.
company I built, a line of 9 drums inspired by West African traditions, and I played for, dance classes, and I, sold drums out of my shop, and I wholesaled to about 60 stores all over. I had a pretty nice little company, and it was a very bohemian lifestyle. Like, I would make something, I'd go sell it. I would do, fairs and festivals, and I met a lot of interesting people, and it allowed me to live a very, dynamic, creative life. But something came and I was like, I love this, but it can't be, this isn't what I'm going to do for my whole life. I'm fine to have this be like a cornerstone or a thing, on my wall, but it can't be the whole foundation of my life. I know I want to do something more. I didn't know what though, but I knew something else. So
Mhm.
I sold the company and I went on like a 2-year walkabout trying to figure out what's next, and also just take a break, decompress from, building a company is, it's a lot of work. And,
It is,
it's
it's
very
exhausting.
intensive for, 12, 14-hour days for a long time, which I enjoyed. I loved it. It was a lifestyle thing, but still it was all consuming for a while. So there's this time to completely go the other direction and have nothing planned and just be able to just organically find my flow,
Yes.
throughout traveling and adventuring around life and the serendipity of a new place and who you might meet and what, you go to the food store and there's a cool flyer. Oh, wow, there's a concert happening, or there's here's a cool thing to plug into, and just letting life unfold, sort of spontaneously was very healthy for me to do it on the back end of knuckling down and focusing and running a company and hiring people and all that kind of stuff. So I found myself at a house party where it was a big drum circle. This living room was full. There was about 20 people in there. Everyone was playing drums and stuff. And I came to the party late and I didn't have a drum. And so,
How ironic.
isn't it? Yeah. I came to the party, late and with no drum. And here I am, a drummer and a drum builder, and but didn't have a drum. And so I looked around and all the drums were taken except for this tiny little toy of a drum, you know. So I was like, okay, well, fine, why not? I sat down and got busy, and I could only play it with my fingers. Like, it wasn't even big enough to hit with my hands. It was just tiki tiki. But there's all everyone. It's thunder in the in the
Yeah.
room. I can't even hear myself. But I was like, that's all right, And so, but I started, just feeling the rhythm, and I could
Mhm.
feel sometimes the rhythm is like, oh, it's faltering or something has happened. And so I would, on my drum, I would like play what it needed to be, and
Mhm.
lo and behold, the whole circle shifted. And I was like,
To the
"This is,"
smallest.
and I was like, "That's impossible. Let me try that again." And so I intentionally took the rhythm in a different direction, and the circle followed. And I was like, "Wow, that did that really happen?" Like, or is it just twice lucky? So I did it again, and it happened again. And I said, "Okay, that's influence. That's not coincidence."
Right.
And I said, "I can't even hear myself, yet somehow the intention I'm holding and putting out there, everyone else, because everyone had gotten into some sort of collective sensitivity, because we're all
Mhm.
tuning into this rhythm, it somehow had influence in it, and it worked." And, I also was perhaps a more experienced drummer than many of the people there, and so there was some leadership, that was
For
happening.
sure.
People weren't looking at me, it was just, it's just like, perhaps an energetic thing or a quality of it, a certain,
There's a
we
resonance that
naturally,
happens. Yeah.
I think
I was
so.
once
Yeah,
I was once in an all cello play-in, and there were over 300 cellists
I love the
all
cello.
gathered in this huge arena, and it was like 3 stories high, and we were all on one floor, and I swear to you, if one cellist, 50 feet away from you changed, the ripple effect was incredible.
Oh,
It was amazing. I couldn't see the
oh, I love to
conductor.
hear that.
It's so far away, you can't possibly see the conductor, and he's
Right.
busy conducting literally children who were just in there playing one note, and he's
Sure.
teaching them, which is
Yeah.
fabulous in and of itself, this orchestral conductor. But you could literally hear one player 50 feet away, and you could feel it. You could feel that of resonance that just moved through all of us. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Thank you for that confirmation. I haven't, here I was just thinking this was some just weird outlying,
And you're a
experience, but it
wizard.
sounds
That's
like it's
okay
it's
too. You
it's
can
real.
believe that.
I experienced something that's a known and understood phenomenon. Even if I
Absolutely.
can't fully explain it, I experienced it, and it was there.
Yeah.
So for me, it was profound, and this sort of realization of how connected we actually are, even if
Mhm.
we're not consciously aware of it. For me, it gave me a moment. It's like, oh wow, we are connected here. And so the rhythm came to a stop, and there was a lull, and everyone was sort of sitting there, you know, in those few seconds of silence after the last drum has been,
Yeah.
after the last thing, and then of course people start to talk amongst themselves and chat a little bit here and there, and I just sat quietly and kind of reflected. And after a minute or two, 5 minutes, I don't know how much time went on, but shortly after, before people started playing drums again, when people were still talking and everything, I suddenly had this strong craving for chocolate.
Mm.
And I did not have a chocolate habit at the time, and I hadn't even cultivated, uh, a strong taste for it.
Mhm.
And so I felt this really desire. I was like, oh man, I really want chocolate. Yummy, yummy, yummy. I'm thinking about that. And then all of a sudden, like my conscious mind wakes up and says, Taylor, hold on a second. You literally haven't had chocolate. I can't remember that. It's been months since you had chocolate. And like, I never crave chocolate. What is going on? And right when I asked myself that question, directly across the circle from me, a young woman says out loud to the whole group, I'm really craving a chocolate bar right now. And I said to myself, my God, it
Mhm.
wasn't me at all. I was picking up on this other person's thing, and I was feeling her craving in my own body. That
Yeah.
wasn't me, you know? And so,
That's
I
that
left the party
collective.
that I left the party that night and I said to myself, all right, look, brother, talking to myself and call myself a
I like
brother.
that you call yourself brother.
Hey
I call
man,
myself
you
sister
gotta
sledge,
pay
sister sledge,
attention
but
here. This is substantial because and so what happened is I started realizing, look, I have thoughts, I have feelings, but where do they come from? Are they
mm.
really mine? Am I just picking up on someone else's thought? Am I being subconsciously knee-jerk reaction to my environment? Something I see and it's blue. I like blue. Oh, it's red. I don't like red. I'm just responding, at a visceral gut response or
Mhm.
I think, "Oh, I want this." Is it because, when I was 6 years old, I saw a commercial that put that seed in
Right.
my brain? Is it just programming? Like, what's true? What's really me versus what's programming or my response to everything out there? And so, you know, I found this old picture of me when I'm just, like, 2 years old, and I looked at that picture and I was looking into the eyes of this little boy, and I thought, this little spirit, this little bright spark arrive on planet Earth with some sort of desire or agenda or mission? Because right now is young enough and pure enough to not have been,
Mhm.
influenced dramatically and not corrupted, not in a bad way, but, colored,
Yeah.
colored
Yes.
by
Yes.
the world. And I said, if I could tune in with that, then I would perhaps be more on target and more in flow with what's true for my spirit rather than just my personality that I've learned as an adaptation to, we're products of our environment.
For
It
sure.
is what it is. And so at the time I still drank a little alcohol and would occasionally smoke marijuana, would, you know, and I decided that I needed to stop doing those things
Mhm.
because they would obscure my sensitivity and my clarity. And I started practicing meditation. I had already been practicing meditation, but I started getting really serious about it and regular about it because I said, I need to know if I have a thought, if I have a feeling, if I have an impulse, I want to be able to successfully and accurately identify where it came from. Just
Is it
because it came
mine?
from outside of me doesn't mean it's bad, but I want to know
Correct.
if I and if it came from within, and just because it came from within of me doesn't mean it's good. But I wanna
Correct.
know, if I can't identify the source of my impulses, then I have no hope of living an intentional life. I'm only living a
Mhm.
reactive life. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living.
That's right.
If you believe that, then I believe as an architect, the unintentional home is not worth living in because your home is going to mirror back to you either success or failure.
Yes.
Within the context of what your personal goals are. One home might be perfect for one person, but not for another, right? And so there's no
Mhm.
universal truth there, right? But just like we all pick our outfits that we wear that work for us or what hobbies we like to pick up and engage in. Same thing with our built environment. But there is such a thing as a good home or a bad home based on how well it lifts you into the future you want to create for yourself. The ability to shape your home is the ability to shape your future, create your destiny. to a degree.
My God. 1,000% to absolutely every word you just said. 1,000%. A couple of things that stood out to me. So, listeners, as you're listening to Taylor's story, there's this collective experience that happens, and we feel it in music. So, Yo-Yo Ma says that music is really just your soul expressed through sound. That's it.
Okay.
And so when musicians come together and they create one sound, that is the soul just getting bigger, better, brighter, and acting in a stronger, higher vibration, like a stronger vibrational pulse. So it doesn't surprise me that you sort of caught on to the girl's craving, not in any way, shape, or form. And it also doesn't surprise me that she suddenly craved chocolate. Because chocolate has a vibration, and it has a very high vibration, and what it does for the human body is that when you eat it, when you ingest it, it very quickly takes your energy level and, like, power up. It's like in a video game, it's a power up for your battery source,
Interesting. Yeah.
and a
Sure.
lot gets spent when you're creating music like that, especially drums. I mean, come on, that rhythm, it really is just that expression of all of your energy working at once, and the sheer fact that you with 2 fingers were able to start steering people in different directions, that's incredible, that's how open everybody else was.
Uh,
And the human nature, really, when we're that open and we're that peaceful and we're that calm and we're in sort of that frequency of love and harmony, it's the quietest of voices that you wind up following, because that's the voice within. That's the one that you hear. And when we're like distracted with the loud voice, that's just the loud, angry, fearful voice screaming at the top of their lungs, "Look at me." That's an amazing experience that you had. Thank you so much for sharing that.
you're welcome. Yeah. So, after the end of that walkabout, I was like, well, what's next? What's next? Suddenly the light bulb went off. Oh, you're going to be an architect. It's always been there. You just never saw it before. And, even going back to early childhood, the games I played and the actors, they say you connect the dots in reverse. You don't see it going
For
through, but
sure.
then when you get to a certain point, you look back and like, oh yeah, look at all those little flags that were planted along the trail. And suddenly it takes the shape, connect the dots. It suddenly looks like something once you draw the lines between them. And so at 25 years old, I went back to college, and engaged the profession of architecture. And so I brought with me, just like not all doctors or not all attorneys are equal, that within
Mhm.
the field, there's so many ways you can specialize a practice, and based on your interests and based on your, who you are as an individual, et cetera, et cetera. So I brought with me this sort of mind body spirit connection, a very strong um, awareness of it and a personal practice around clarity in that area. And so, I brought that, I view architecture through that lens. And, the highest calling of architecture is to help people live happily ever after.
Mhm.
Right. We want, everyone's out there waving a flag. Hey, live your best life, live your best life. But what does that actually mean?
Right. Right, right,
Right.
right.
I mean, best life is just such a big, vague term. It sounds good, but
But
like,
how?
right, exactly. If you can identify it, again, it's getting back to, you talked about, asking questions. The quality of your question determines the quality of your results. You ask
Mhm.
good questions, you get good outcomes. Because people can ask questions and get an accurate answer, but they could still end up in the wrong direction. Like if you ask someone, "Hey, how do I get to San Francisco?" and they tell you, you could end up in San Francisco. It's not until you get there that you go, "Actually, did I say San Francisco? I meant Los Angeles." And you find
Right.
yourself in the wrong destination because you didn't ask the right question.
And I didn't need to go via Japan? What?
Any number of things, right? And so,
Right.
I wanted to understand, what are the questions as a designer. I wrote my book, Conscious Home Design. If you'd asked 25-year-old Taylor about my career trajectory and the milestones that I wanted to hit, I thought I'll get out of college and maybe within 5 years, I'll get my book out the door. you know,
Mm.
like architecture is an apprentice profession. So you have to do all these years of school and then you have to go work as a slave underneath underneath another architect for years and years
Yeah.
and years before you're able to even be eligible to sit for taking the exams, which is another mountain to climb, another marathon, to get licensed. And so I had my timeline all planned out, as at 25, but it didn't turn out that way. I didn't publish my book actually until 20 years in the profession. So
Mhm.
it took a lot of time. But it was very clear I didn't want to write under a style guide, something about opinion based or aesthetically driven. I was
Mhm.
looking for, universal truths, things rooted in science, things that because I assume if you work with a designer, an architect, anyone who specializes in placemaking, that you're going to get the style you want. That's a given.
For
Obviously,
sure.
it's like
If you
saying, "Hey,
live
I'm going to
there.
go shopping. I'm going to go shopping at the mall for clothes." I
Mhm.
assume you're going to get something you like, the color you like, but let's make sure we get something that actually fits your body because you could have the
Yeah.
coolest outfit by your favorite designer that looks so snazzy, but if it's 3 sizes wrong, it's not gonna serve you very well. And you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, but I got it on sale. I got it for half off." It's like, "Yeah, but it's still the wrong size."
Right, you
So
right,
no, it
right.
wasn't. So I was looking for things that I said, "What's universally true? Let's make sure that a space fits us as a human being first, and then we can put the ornamentation on that
Mhm.
framework." So, because I see a lot of beautiful stuff in magazines and on Pinterest and being shown out there. It's like, my God, look at that. That is a monument to kitchens. That's like a temple of a kitchen. It's like they spent $100,000 just on the appliances,
Yeah.
another $100,000 on cabinets and countertops, and then the labor and the design fees and all the odds and ends and extra things. And it's like, people are spending, you could see kitchens that someone spent three, 400,000, $500,000 even on their
Yeah.
kitchen. And you look at
Can't
it and
cook
think,
in it,
"That's
but
so
yes.
beautiful." But then I look at it more carefully, and I'm like, the refrigerator is
Yeah.
literally 25 feet away from the sink. Try to
Yes.
make a sandwich in a kitchen like that. It's like there's so much effort and work, and you realize it's beautiful, but it's not very functional. If you were trying to prepare 3 meals a day for a whole family in there, it's not possible. I mean, it's like if you come home at the end of the day and you're tired, you're not gonna go through cooking a big meal. You're gonna look for shortcuts. And so there's something about right size spaces that are efficient and effective and help you actually meet your goal. If you say I have a goal of maintaining a very nutrient rich and fresh and good diet, then having a big massive kitchen is gonna, when you're pressed for time in the morning or you're tired in the evening, you're gonna look
Mhm.
for shortcuts. And that means maybe not putting something together with 15 different ingredients. It maybe only has 4 ingredients. And it's fine here and there. The body is resilient. But over years, that's going to take a toll on you. And so you may have the most beautiful kitchen in the world, and it might not actually serve you the things that really matter. It may serve you aesthetically. You may be proud of it. You may be able to show people, "Hey, look at my fancy kitchen. I've arrived. See how awesome and successful I am that I've been able to achieve this in my life." And you are. And that is personally satisfying and fulfilling. And we do derive enrichment from that.
For sure.
But it's not a guarantee of life expectancy or true happiness at the end.
Right.
The way real healthy diet, supporting your health and in your nutrition would be. And so I'm looking at these universal truths, these scientific first principles, our higher needs beyond just our physical. We also have our creative expression needs and our personal development needs and our love and belonging and connection and relationship needs. All of these things, when they're supported, because you can give someone shelter, even beautiful shelter, but that's not a guarantee of happiness. That's just, you know what I mean? And so the
Oh,
things that
yeah.
actually make you happy, let's focus on what those are and see if we can build those into architecture, into the home you occupy. Because we spend half our lives in our homes. It's such a great place to start. And for people that work from home, they're spending 90% of their life in their home.
Yeah.
So environment has an influence. Winston Churchill said, "We shape our buildings, and thereafter they shape us." And so we want to
Yes.
shape them in a way that is going to be beneficial to what we truly want. So that's conscious home design, right? It's not a style guide. It's not about aesthetics. It's about the fundamentals first. And then we get the aesthetics and the styles, whatever you like, layered on top of that.
I resonate with this so much. So our last house was a complete renovation. It was old Victorian from 1890 that had been renovated into apartments. And when we found it, I walked in. My husband begged me, just give it a chance. Walk in, just see what you think. And I walked in and, it had been cut off. The hallway had been cut off. So you're walking into maybe 5 feet worth of space. And I went, yep, this is it. This is the house that we get to turn back into a home. And I will always say, because of the way that we approached it, that renovation, it was the most amazing experience that I had ever gone through. And it was because we approached it from one, respect for the house. What I really wanted to bring it back to its essence and its core and its beauty from when it was built. But then it was this exercise of who we were as a family, how we functioned, how would our relationships flow through the house.
Mhm.
I really got into it, Taylor, with the architect, the contractor, and my husband. It was 3 against 1 over these pocket doors from the dining room to the living room. And I kept saying, I
Sarah?
don't want them. I want it to be wide open. I really want to feel like there's a whole lot of noise and action in the house. And
Yeah.
those 3 men stood there and they said, "But have you considered?" And I went, "Don't mansplain me." And they went, "Not mansplaining, just offering another perspective." And I was like, "Okay, Lisa, calm down. Calm down." And they said, "Have you considered that maybe you want it to be quiet at some point? Maybe at some point you would like a little privacy, and this actually gives you options."
Mhm.
That that one decision, and there were thousands of decisions, but that one decision, I went, like, a year later, after the house was done and we're living in there, and I went to close those beautiful pocket doors, I called the contractor, the architect, and my husband, and I said, "You're right. You guys were right about these doors. I needed some quiet." And our kids were younger at that time. They were like just starting high school and middle school. And I said, "I really needed a moment to myself, and you guys just gave it to me." And I didn't realize that at some point in my life, I would need to hit pause on being a mother,
Mhm.
hit play on discovering who Lisa was in that moment,
Yeah.
and just breathe.
Yeah.
And that was because of the architecture of the home. Literally, one
Yeah.
architectural decision changed
Right.
everything.
Yeah. Oh, good. Such a great case study there, or case in point, or
Oh, I could give you
example.
like 1,000 of them too. It's
Sure,
amazing.
sure, sure. So what I find is that, I touched on, the hierarchy of human needs, and we need more than just shelter, the basic
Yeah.
program, if you look at the history of humanity, architecture began as, shelter.
Shelter.
That's
Right.
in its most basic form, it's like protect me from, everything that's a hostile environment, And so, the basic program of the house for the past, 100 years for sure, since we've had refrigeration and indoor plumbing
Mhm.
and electricity, common to all homes is, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, hangout space, these sort of four functions, And if you have more people, more bedrooms, and
Right.
whatever. And really, in the past 100 years, that hasn't changed, except now because of the invention of the internet, we have the home office for many people. But prior to the internet, if you look at like 1980, very few people worked from home. The telephone helped a few people, but the percentage of society was tiny that actually worked at home. And so compared to today, where many, or compared to 2019 before the pandemic, it was a
Right.
much
Right.
larger percentage because of the internet there. So you could add, home office into the basic function of the home. But again, that's shelter, and it may be functional, but it's still not enough to guarantee any kind of happiness. And
Yes.
the founding fathers wrote, "Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness." That's fundamental and inalienable, right? And we see
Mhm.
this as self-evident, for people. But happiness, like best life, it's just too big. What does that mean? It's just this big word. So we have our needs of, we need physical activity, we need personal development, inner development. We need to feel like we're growing and accomplishing and good at something, even if it's just a hobby, even if it's just for yourself. We want to feel like we know about something. We want, and we don't want to feel like we know everything, because that gets boring quickly. Oh, I've learned that. I been there, done that. If you feel like there's no more to grow and expand into, you quickly have to move on. We don't we need a sense there's always more potential to grow into and to expand into. We have to keep growing. Yes, we want stability and things you can count on, but we also want possibility.
Yeah.
It's a
Ooh.
human requirement, yeah? And so personal growth, creative expression, we all also have to do something, have to generate something. It's a fundamental need. And in the home, we're not creating the program based on those questions. Again, asking the good questions. If I said to Lisa, if you came to me and said, "Taylor, I want to build a brand new home. Can you help me, lay it out?" I said, "Well, Lisa, what do you like to do for personal development? What do you do?" And you say, "Oh, well, I like to, journal, or I'm studying, I'm going back for a second master's degree in whatever thing, or this or that, And I said, "Okay, great. Just whatever it is, let's find out. Let's write it down." And then I said, "Well, Lisa, what do you like to do for creative expression?" You said, "So much. I like to do podcasting. I like to play the cello. I like to do jewelry making. Whatever it is. Let's see what those are." And then we can think about incorporating space in your
Mm.
home dedicated to those activities. Because, Seth Godin said, "Hey, it's 10,000 hours is the average, is a rule of thumb to get mastery at something." And if it's just a hobby for yourself, you don't need to put in that kind of time, obviously. But what he's saying is practice makes perfect, right? We
Right.
know this. It takes time, it takes effort to accomplish anything worthwhile. That's pretty self evident. But what's missing from that common sense formula is that it also takes space. If you don't
Yeah.
have space to do that thing in, you're going to have a real hard time doing it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, the most famous piece of art in the world. It's 500 years old. By now, everyone's heard of it. But it took him over a decade to paint that. When I learned that, I said, "Oh, that's exactly it." 'Cause when he was called away to other work, or he didn't have the inspiration to work on that, he was able to
Mhm.
put it aside and then come back to it. He had an art studio. If he didn't have an art studio, if we didn't have architecture, we wouldn't be able to accomplish anything that took more than a sunny afternoon, because as soon as the weather changed or night came and wild animals came and messed it up, we wouldn't accomplish. So
Right.
architecture, the ability to control our environment and dedicate space to an activity, allows us to build on yesterday's achievements, whether it's
Oh.
art, science, technology, medicine, you name it, right? It's like dedicating space to an activity means you give yourself a higher chance of success in that. So when life gets busy, which it does, especially when you have young kids, family demands, job demands from work, whatever is calling for your attention, some of the first things that we cut out to try to economize our time are the self growth, the creative expression
Yes.
activities, possibly the physical activities. You hear about dad bod.
Mhm.
It's like, "Oh, I used to go to the gym all the time. I looked great, but now I got kids. I don't have time for that anymore." Right. And so there's things that get cut out of our life to find time to do the priorities. And so that's very normal. But what happens is, if 10 years go by and Lisa says, "Oh my God, I haven't played my cello in 10 years," suddenly you feel like it can become a crisis. It's like, I'm
Mhm.
starving, I'm drowning. It's like, maybe my life looks perfect, but I'm drowning, I'm starving. It's like, yes, you haven't been feeding yourself. You've been giving,
Yeah.
giving, giving, giving. There's three kinds of relationships. There's giving, there's receiving, there's reciprocal, and we need to have a healthy balance of those in our lives. Ones where we show up as the giver, but we also need to receive, and we also need to have equal exchange relationships like you and I are having right now. And this is a reciprocal relationship. And so in conscious home design, I'm saying, look, let's build opportunity to have, if there's a nook in your home that's
Mhm.
dedicated to personal development or creative activity, You know, look, if your cello is locked in the closet in its case or in the attic, of course
It doesn't
it's
get
not going to
played.
get
That's right.
played. Out of sight, out of mind. If you only have 15 minutes, you're not going to go up there and schlep it down
That's
and
right.
up. But if it's set up in an alcove waiting for you with just a dust cloth over it and your chair and bow are ready to go, and you only have 15 minutes, that's enough time to step in and play a song or do some
That's
scales and
right.
get your fingers loose, right? And it may not be the 2 hours a day I used to play when I was, in college or before I had a
But it's
family,
enough.
but at least
It's
it's something to keep my
yes.
spark alive and I don't get to a crisis moment in the future. So, conscious home design is about supporting you in the things that feed you so that you can stay in flow and live your best life and not get unbalanced and lopsided
Oh,
and have to do a major tear it all down and restructure, course correction, because you
yeah.
found out you were heading to San Francisco and you wanted to go to Los Angeles. We want to do just minor adjustments rather than radical things. Look, the ability to build a brand new home from scratch is a quantum leap in being able to shape your destiny. Fully support it if you have the opportunity, but most people won't do that. Most people will do the best they can with the walls they have.
Mhm.
So are there little 2% shifts that we can make, that will have big results, And that's how, we work with the butterfly effect. The mathematician wrote, "Do the flapping of a butterfly's wings in Brazil eventually set off a tornado in Texas?"
Yep.
And,
Yep.
he was doing work on weather patterns and algorithmic or logarithmically, he charted and showed how that happens. Sort of like the snowball effect or a compounding
Mhm.
compounding interest in an S curve. And he said he proved, with the math how while it's true that not all small things become big things, all big things started as small things. And big life changing events had sensitive dependence on the initial conditions. And so, as an architect, I'm saying, what little sensitivities can we have on setting up initial conditions in small ways in your home that over years will compound and be life changing? Right. So, because not everyone will hire an architect, but could they read my book and could they do the workbook to see what these ideas
Mhm.
would look like for them in their situation? Yes, anyone, even renting an apartment, could do that and make these
Mhm.
little shifts that are meaningful in their life. So, yeah, that's conscious home design.
That is so beautiful. That's so beautiful. I over, 15 years that I've been working with clients, the biggest impact that I've ever wanted to have was a quarter inch of progress is massive
Yeah.
progress. Because you've completely changed your situation just by making these small changes. And they add up over time. Just as the quietest of drummers created a massive, huge shift in a drumming circle.
Mhm.
One cellist
Interesting.
can
Yes.
completely change an orchestra on how they play.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
remember sitting with a conductor and I was watching the conductor and I'm listening to the conductor, but I'm also listening to what everyone around me was playing. And I asked him, and I was new to this whole playing in an orchestra, and asked the conductor. I said, "Well, I'm confused. Do I follow you, or do I follow what's happening around me?" And
Mm.
he said, "Well, ideally, Lisa, you follow the conductor, but I understand your question." And I said, "Because I hear, someone's a half beat off over there, but then I also hear a half scale flat over here. And with a cello, you're able to adjust to everything that's happening around you. So it's what small adjustments can I make to be able to meld into what's happening around me?" And what I hear you saying is, Lisa, listen to the conductor. Make those small changes that are right for you and let everything else fall into place to follow. And
Yeah.
that's
Right.
huge and extremely impactful and brings us back around to your personal journey of really wanting to discover, is it my voice that I'm hearing? Are these my decisions that I'm making from a place of truth, from clarity? Or have I been influenced into thinking that this is what I want to do? And coming into that place of quiet to be able to figure that out so that you can start living the life that supports you, that starts in your home.
Yes. If not your home, then where? Yes? So, because our home really is the place where we are supposed to be able to be ourselves, let our hair down and
Absolutely.
be comfortable. It's supposed to be a place where we can rest and recharge and renew, but also create ourselves fresh,
Yes.
and
Yes.
renew. We're always recreating ourselves and evolving in small ways, hopefully, so we're not stagnating, right? We want to be, we can be ourselves, but still, evolve.
Exactly.
Yeah. The
When the
home
kids were little, I used to say, "I want them to be able to walk in the front door, throw down their things, and if they needed to cry, then that's when they would cry. If they needed to scream, then that's when they would scream." Because they kept it together outside of the house, but allow them to come into a place where they felt safe and secure to express their truth and then recover and figure out how to make changes, how to be better, how to right, how to create the life they wanna live. And I think the same can be said for all of us. We wanna be able to walk in our door, throw everything down, scream if you need to, cry if you need to, but then go, "Okay, but I'm safe here, I'm secure here. Now I get to make decisions to help me be the best version of myself."
Right. Yes. Once, obviously shelter is very important, and not everyone in the world has stable, safe shelter. And so,
Yeah.
you know, that's unfortunate. But for the fortunate people who have been able to create shelter and maintain a safe place, then the next question is beyond shelter, how can it serve my more human needs beyond just the body?
Mhm.
And the home really, if we think of it that way, if we come at it that way, it's not just a shelter, it's actually one of the most powerful personal development tools we have available to
Yeah.
us. And
Yeah.
this is what, for me, living your best life looks like. It starts at home. Many of the things we may get opportunities for creative expression or personal growth and stuff outside of the home. Physical activities. We may like to go for walks or bike rides or whatever, what have you. It's not saying that you have that the home is the only place where you're going to get everything, and if you're not getting it at home, then you're not going to get it. But by creating opportunity for it at home, you're ensuring it's like taking vitamins. It's like saying, well, if I
Mhm.
don't get it in my diet, at least these supplements I'm gonna make sure I have it. And so it's like if you're not getting that creative spark fed that you need to through your work or through your life in a moment, well, you have a chance to do it at home. And when it's at home, it's the most friction free, usually,
Mhm.
because it means you don't have to commute. It's like I remember one time I bought a membership to the gym, but it was almost 30 minutes away to drive. And I was like, I'm spending an hour commuting by the time I
Right.
get out the
To
door
be my
and
healthiest
get in
self.
and change my clothes and all that. It's like, my goodness, it's an hour of wasted time that I'm just in the car, not and it's like, and so I ended up not following through very well on my exercise goal there because of that friction point. Whereas if I had had space to do physical activity in my home at the time, which I
Mhm.
didn't. I mean, I could have rearranged it, but I didn't. I was still a young man, and I didn't. The whole conscious home design system and methodology had not been fully developed yet. Like I said, conscious home design. I wrote the book 20 years in. Yes,
20 years. Right.
it took me 20 years to develop this. So anyway, I suffered, because I didn't have that time. Whereas if I had it at home, it would have been that much easier. And time that I've spent driving, well, I could have already done more than my goal. It might,
Right.
20 minutes. If all I wanted to do was work out for 20 minutes, I could have done that just in the time it took me to commute one way to the gym, And
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
and I was living a pretty busy life, and that time was precious, and it was like,
Mhm.
um, and there was, this was a long time ago, and there were not, as many, podcasts and things to listen to and stuff. So it was that commute time was truly wasted. Yeah. So this is what country's tone is about. It's about saying, look, let's make sure that you have the opportunity to do the things that feed you in your home. And look, that doesn't mean you have to have a 5,000 square foot home and be rich, to be
Right.
able to support all
Right.
that. We can, it's just about how we allocate the space that we do have. Um, and setting things up. So priorities. There was this. Did you see that YouTube video? It came out, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago. Some science or some high school teacher had a jar on his desk with rocks and pebbles and sand.
Yes. Yes. And water. Yes.
And he was like, if you pour if you put in the rocks, if you put in the pebbles in the sand first, then it fills up, and then the rocks, they don't quite fit. But if you put the
Right.
rocks in first, then everything else fills in the cracks. And so it was about priorities. And so in conscious home design, I'm asking, what are the priorities? Let's make sure that we put the big rocks into your jar, into your home first, and then the small things can fall into place. And so that's what, so that's the approach, and asking the right questions and finding out what the rocks are, so we can find the low hanging fruit that's going to make you more successful. The conscious home design workbook, you go through and you can go around your home, whatever it may
Mhm.
be, whatever and wherever your home is at the moment. And you can say, here's where I'm well supported, and here's some gaps. And once you find, things, once you can identify, you can say, okay, how do I feel about that? Do I want to make a shift? And the power is in your hands now. And you can choose where you want to make a correction or a cure, in your
Yeah.
space, based on what resonates the most with you. Say, oh, well, if I do this, that's going to give me the most bang for my effort, the most return on my effort. And so, and again, even those little things, the 2% shifts can be huge. So we're not conscious home design is not all or nothing. You know, it's going to meet you where you are and help you just identify and guide you to creating the next best version of yourself, whatever that looks like.
That's fantastic. So, for the listener who would like to start making changes and shifts in their own home, you do offer a workbook, which
Yeah.
I have gone through, listeners. And I mean, listen, this is like a passion of mine, and I absolutely love it. I love going through my house and looking for ways to support myself and my family. Um, so, it's like a sixth sense for me now. But for the listener who would like to get started, how can they find you? How can they get your book? How can they get the workbook and get started?
In learning more, they can just go to my website, conscioushomedesign.com. And there's a bundle. You can get the book, the audiobook, and the workbook all as an instant download. You can also order a physical copy there if you want. I'll even sign it and snail mail it to you. And anyway, if you order the physical copy, you'll also get the digital download as well. So you don't have to wait to start digging in. There's also a contact me form there if you want to pick my brain and set up a consultation. I do, or if you do the workbook and you want my feedback on it,
Mm.
just reach out. And whether you just uh, want a little bit of feedback about how you rearrange your apartment, or whether you want to renovate a home or build a brand new home. I work all over the country, coast to coast, top to bottom. So happy to help.
All
ConsciousHomeDesign.com.
49 states? Where's the 50th? Which one did you not visit?
I have yet to hit Alaska. Yeah.
Mm.
Although I've been to British Columbia, I didn't get all the way up to Alaska. Yeah.
One,
Not yet anyway. I'd like to.
dog sled away, right?
I was thinking probably not an Iditarod kind of thing, but maybe there are some nice boats that you can take up the coast.
Mhm.
You can hop on in the San Juan Islands and take a mini cruise up, and that can be pretty nice. We'll see.
Well, Taylor, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom, your experience, your journey. There's so much to learn here. And listeners, just scroll down. The link is right there in the show notes for you. I think there's just so much to learn. And remember that one small change in your home can set you off on this journey of discovery, self discovery, and exploration into who you really want to be during this phase of your life. So if you're sitting there and you're wondering, like, what in the hell do I do now? This just might answer, or at least start to answer your questions. And take it from me, employ an architect because they really do bring this wealth of knowledge and experience, having worked with so many different kinds of clients, that they're going to see things that you're probably going to miss. I know I did, and I absolutely love this stuff. They offer a different perspective that really, really, really can change how you function in your world, how your home supports you. So, if you're curious, scroll down, hit the link, start seeing your home as something more than just shelter, something more than just safety. Start looking at it as possibility and hope, support for your dreams. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with me. Thank you, listener, for listening. Taylor, thank you for being an awesome guest. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Lisa, for having me. Really nice to chat with you.
All right, I'll see you guys next time. All right, so here's a little
So we're
bonus material for us because Taylor was just talking to me off camera, and I said, Could I please record this so that you can share it with everybody?" So, Taylor, please take it away.
Yeah. I mentioned in our talk the three categories of relationship: the giving, the receiving, and the reciprocal. But we didn't dive into those in our conversation. And it's actually worth spending a minute to cover those because the Harvard study of adult happiness found that our relationships, having quality connections, are the single biggest predictor of our happiness in life and even our life expectancy. They found that people that had quality connections, and they studied thousands of individuals for the past 88 years. This study started in 1938 and is still going on today. And they found that no matter people's business success or failure or career changes or whether they had a big fancy house or a very modest house, all the different circumstances, they all matter, but the single biggest factor was the quality of their connections. And so as an architect, I said, how can I facilitate quality connections and relationships in the home? Relationship is another big nebulous word like happiness. What does that actually mean? And so I created, this identification of giving, receiving, and reciprocal, these sort of categories, these broad categories that are different. The way we interact can be understood so that I can go through the home and say, okay, let's look at this room. Do we have an opportunity for a giving relationship here? Do we have an opportunity for a receiving relationship here and a reciprocal relationship? And so when we do that, we know that we're going to be more supported, and if architecture can actually help people live longer because we're facilitating positive relationships, then it's really a quantum leap forward in terms of the value proposition that we have. It's no longer just shelter, which already, if you have shelter, you know, healthy diet, hygiene, that's going to help you live longer. But the next step is those relationships. So that's anyway, in the book and the workbook, I drill down specifically like what
Mhm.
does a giving relationship look like in the context of the home? Examples of that and how you could find opportunities for that. This is where the big idea, the rubber meets the road. It's like little things that you could do, in your home without having to do renovations, just little shifts that you can make that actually are going to support that. So yeah, thanks for this little bonus moment. I really wanted to share that with people because it moves the needle. It's a big factor. Harvard says it's number one, in terms of the reporting, and they studied thousands of individuals, and they're on multiple generations now, and that was the single biggest data point. So it's worth paying
I
attention
love
to.
that. I love that you just dropped that knowledge on us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's it, listener. Before you go, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and set your notifications to never miss an episode. If you'd like even more with me, come on over to nagarelife.com. And if you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, go on and share it. Share it with somebody that you think would enjoy it as well. All right, I'll see you next time.